The video that you're about to watch has literally changed millions of women's lives. Now, if you've ever struggled with how to find a bob hairstyle that actually flatters your face shape, works with your hair texture, and still looks amazing the second and third day after you style it, wait until you see this. You're gonna discover how to pick the most youthful bob for you, secret step-by-step styling hacks that I think honestly no one tells you, and why most women have been doing it wrong for years. Let me save you a little bit of time. See, in this video, I've actually compiled some of my most viral videos about bobs that have literally been watched by millions of women that completely changed the way that they approach their bob hairstyles. So let's dive in with, first of all, what bob hairstyle is actually best for your face shape and your hair texture. If you get the wrong bob haircut, it can make your face look too full, too long, or just look frumpy and make you feel terrible. After being a professional hairstylist for 30 years, I've had thousands of unhappy clients come in and say that they needed a change. And I remember one very specifically, we'll call her Susan, and she was super frustrated. She said, I really want this haircut, but I just don't like bobs on me. They don't look good. So I asked her, I was like, why did you not like the bob? And she said, well, it made my face feel really round. I said, really? Tell me about that. Well, the first thing that she said, the length was to my chin, and I immediately knew what was wrong. Now, I was actually jacked because I gotta tell her, look, Susan, this was not the bob haircut that didn't work for you. It was the length that didn't work for you. And a slight modification could have actually made your face feel long instead of too full. And I'm gonna teach you that not only can you wear a bob haircut, but how to pick one that's going to look amazing on you and you're gonna feel amazing in. So in this video, we're gonna walk through the different face shapes and different hair textures, and I'm gonna explain how you can get the best bob for you. Now, I know that when we get to your face shape and your hair texture, you're gonna wanna listen to that one and then move on and be done with the video. I am telling you, please do not do that, because as you watch through this whole video and all of the different hair textures and face shapes, you're gonna start seeing the patterns in this. And as you see those patterns, you're fully gonna understand what you need to do to make these bob shapes work the best for you. I'm not giving you a fish here, I'm gonna teach you how to fish. Now, at the end of this video, I'm gonna kind of simplify everything. I'm gonna wrap it up in a nice little package for you so that you can understand how to use all of this information with simple steps so that you can pick the best bob haircut for you. Okay, so first I need to explain the face shapes and why I'm kind of talking about two, even though clearly there are more than just that. So first off, you have oval face shapes where you can essentially wear whatever you want. I know people hate hearing that, but it's true. So then you have diamond, oblong, or heart shapes where you're basically trying to add a bit of fullness around the jaw to offset the fullness in your cheekbones or offset the length of your face a bit. For all intents and purposes, basically that means that we're doing a lot of the same thing when it comes to what we're gonna be talking about today. So I'm gonna kind of lump that into one group. Then you have square or round faces where you're wanting a little bit of extra length in the face to offset that fullness or to soften things a bit. So I'm, again, mixing that into one category since we're basically doing the same thing or modifying it in a very similar way to create very similar results. So our two categories are full face, which is referring to round face shapes or square face shapes, situations where you're trying to offset the fullness around the cheeks by creating the illusion of more length in your face, and long face, which refers to rectangular or oblong faces where you're trying to add a bit more fullness to your face. So the first category we're gonna start with here is thin, straight texture, full face. You basically wanna try to keep the length below the chin. And as you can see, there's a little bit of length down here being actually longer than the chin is gonna help to actually create a little bit more length in the face. Now you can see that in this shot right here, where there's a little bit of beveling right there. That helps it to lay in a little bit better. And when you get that to lay in a little bit better, it's gonna make your hair actually look a little bit thicker. Maybe light hidden layers if you possibly can get away with it. Now you can barely see this, and when I say hidden layering, I think this is important because it's not strong layering, so your hair still looks thick, but it's a little bit of layering to kind of lighten that up. Now, bangs could be a very good option here, and the only thing you want to think about bangs, you want to keep them from being too square across. You just want them to kind of blend into the sides a little bit more so that they don't end up looking too square and actually adding more fullness to the face. Basically, your main goal is to keep the length longer than the chin while not adding too much layering, but enough to keep it from getting too flat on top, and then potentially adding some bangs to create the illusion of a little bit more density around the front hairline. Now, if you've got a long face and thin hair that's straight, you're gonna keep the length closer to the chin. Bringing that length up closer to the chin actually helps to give a little bit of fullness to the face so it doesn't feel quite so long. Now you're gonna bevel it again at the nape a little bit. If there weren't any layers down at the bottom, this shape would look a lot more like this, and then that would actually bring the eye down. Now, even though your hair is fine, you can still have a little bit of layering because that little bit of layering on the sides is actually gonna help to create a little bit more fullness. Even though there's not a ton of fullness up here, there's still more fullness around here, and that line is still like this. This line is gonna draw the illusion of more fullness up here. And if you want bangs, fuller is better, and around the eyebrows and length is a good idea. Again, the main goal here is to keep the length closer to the chin to add a little bit of fullness to the face, with a little bit of layering at the bottom to keep the top from being too flat, and then again with the bangs to add a bit of potential fullness and thickness around that front hairline. Okay, let's talk about curly hair. If you've got a round or full face, you're gonna, again, wanna keep that length below the chin, and you're gonna wanna bevel that nape a little bit, and some layering on top to remove some of the bulk out of the sides, and add a bit more volume on the top. Now, if you can see here, there's still some layering on the sides, because curly hair is going to compound on itself, so it's going to look denser even when it's not. So a little bit more layering through there is gonna help to keep that from really getting too triangular very quickly, and that's exactly what can happen. But again, we're still leaving this length longer so that it has an ability to kind of draw the face out a little bit and keep it from looking too round. And if you see here, we've got bangs, but if we notice, the bangs are a little bit on the lighter side. They're not super square and full, because if they get too square and too full, it's gonna start making the face look really round. So we wanna make sure that if we're gonna do bangs, we keep them a little bit softer to kind of break the face up a little bit and add some interest, but not too heavy. The main goal here is that essentially the same as with straight hair, but a little bit more layering on the sides, or at least removing a little bit more bulk from the sides, since curly hair or wavy hair can handle a tiny bit more layering and still look more dense than its straight hair counterpart. Okay, what if you've got a long face and curly hair? You wanna keep the length a little bit closer to the chin again on this. Less layering on the sides is fine in this situation because you wanna add a bit of fullness to the face, but a tiny bit of layering would actually be beneficial to remove some of the bulk so it's not too triangular and too full. Leaving a little bit of fullness on the sides is actually not a bad thing. And again, we've got that length sitting right in about the chin. All of this stuff is helping to add a little bit of fullness to the face. Same goes here. Could she do a thicker bang here? Yes. But if we were gonna do a thicker bang here, we would want that bang to be the eyebrow line, so right about in there. We would not want that to be up here shorter or anything like that, because that's going to actually still add more length to the face. And if we were gonna do a thick bang in here, then I would take a little bit more bulk out of the sides to make sure that we don't add too much fullness to the face. Main goal here is to have the length closer or around the chin and lighten up the sides with layers so that they don't get too full and the top doesn't get too flat. But having a little bit less layering in this scenario would be okay, because having a little bit of extra fullness on the sides is okay since we're trying to add fullness to the face. Okay, so what about medium hair texture? If your hair is straight and you have a full face, then the length longer than the chin with the sides and top layered is gonna be the prescription again. Some layering on the front or a bang would also be a great option here. You can be more dramatic with the layering on the top and the sides. Like you can see here, this length is a little bit longer than the chin again. There's a little bit more layering on the sides, and the nape has got a pretty strong amount of layers to give that a very strong taper or bevel. Same thing kind of going through here. There's actually quite a bit of layering going on to take that bulk out, create the illusion of more volume up here because this part is laying in. Now that length coupled with that, and we're actually adding some overall length to the face. If we were to bring this length up here on her, her face is immediately going to start looking quite a bit fuller. So it's not just one of these things that helps, it's the combination of all of them. But the main goal is that you're trying to keep the volume out of the sides and use the overall length being a bit longer than the chin to add length to the face. For medium hair that's straight, and if you've got a long face, then you're gonna wanna keep the length again right about at the chin. And we still wanna try and keep some layering on top to lighten it up for volume. But having a little less layering on the sides is okay because, again, we're trying to add a bit of width, so that's not as big of a concern. Beveling in the nape would still be nice to help lift the eye up the shape and accentuate jaw structure and bone structure a bit better. There's quite a bit of layering, a little bit more than when hair is just thin, right in this area, and there's still that length that comes in right at about the chin. So this, not only taking bulk out of here, but also it's lightening up this area too, which is creating more volume up here and less volume in here and here, which means that all of this shape feels like there's more volume in these areas because there's less in this area. And if you have an oblong face, this actually might really help you. But this line right here, how that's tapering in like that, being at the chin, it's actually following this jawline right here, which is helping to accentuate a stronger jawline through there and stronger cheekbones through here. The main goal here is to keep the overall length about at the chin with enough layers that the bottom doesn't get so full and the top doesn't go so heavy and flat that it feels way too triangular. Okay, what if you have a medium texture hair and it's curly and your face is full or round? In this situation, we definitely want to focus on keeping the length a little bit longer than the chin. Taking out more bulk on the sides is a really good idea, and definitely layering or beveling the nape. This is kind of what we're talking about. There's quite a bit of layering on the sides. It's pretty aggressive. We've got the length a bit longer than that chin. Now the length doesn't have to be like super long. It can be even longer than this and that's okay, but we need it to be at least this long, and it only works even at this length or this close to the chin if we're taking a lot of bulk out of here. Now that extra bulk out of there is also creating the illusion of more volume up here because again of this line right in here. Okay, we want to make sure that we don't get it too triangular. If it does get too triangular like this, when it does this, because there's not enough layering down there, especially on curly hair, brings the eye like this. And what we want to do is bring the eye like this to follow that jawline and jaw structure. That's what makes this more flattering. And this is the perfect example of the bangs, but if you notice, these bangs are soft. There's still areas in here where you can see, and they're more like this. They're not square like that. The minute we do it square, that's what's gonna actually make it look very full and round in the face shape. The main goal here is to use the length in the front to elongate the face a bit, and then we're pulling enough bulk out of the sides through layering the sides and the top to offset the amount of fullness that curly hair is going to create. But what if you have medium texture, curly hair, and a long face? A length roughly at the chin or even an inch or two longer can work really well. Layering on the sides and the top is going to be super important, but a little less than if your face is more on the round side. A little bit of fullness here is okay again since we're still trying to add width. And we're leaving it a little bit longer in the front because of the extra width that we're gonna get from wave or curl. Now beveling the nape is also a great idea here to help keep that shape from looking too triangular and drawing that eye down more again. So again, here you can see we've got that length closer to the jawline, but we've got bulk taken out of the sides, but there's still a little bit of bulk on the sides. It's not overly layered or crazy layered, and that helps to actually add a little bit of width to the face. Same thing goes here, where there's definitely some layering on the side, but you can see how much bulk there is right in there. That isn't completely removed, and actually having that bulk does a good job, again, of creating a little bit of this line, right? Which again, as we know, or I hope we're learning, accentuates cheekbone structure and jawbone structure more. The main goal is to use the length to add a bit of fullness to the face, but use the layering to ensure that that isn't adding too much fullness or too much triangular shape. Okay, let's move on to thick hair that is straight and you've got a full or round face. In this scenario, we want to, again, keep the length longer than the chin by a few inches. Now, some face framing layers or bangs would work really well here to help pull some of that bulk out of the sides. A generous amount of layering on the sides and some layers on top, as well as beveling, would be a really good option to help pull some of that bulk out of the sides. And this is the perfect example where we've got that extra bit of length to help elongate the face, and we've got a fair amount of layering on the bottom on the sides to really pull that bulk out. When you're talking about thick, dense, thick hair, it's going to get very full and very heavy. So we really need to get quite aggressive with the layering here. Same thing goes here. Hers has still got a bit of extra fullness right in this area, but it's not so bad simply because her length has enough length to still help draw her face out, but also it's layered enough in the sides that it's still creating this line, which is creating the illusion of more volume up through here. So we're accentuating more cheekbones and more jawbones. And the main goal here is, like before, use that extra length to help add length to the face, but also to get more aggressive with the layering to ensure that we get enough bulk out of the sides and in the back to keep from adding too much fullness. The same thing goes for the bangs and layers in the front, as they both also work towards those same goals. Okay, what if you have a long face? Here we want to keep the length closer to the chin. Again, are you seeing a pattern yet? Huh? But still we want to layer the sides and the top. And otherwise, we might end up with way too much fullness here on the sides. Even though we're trying to add some fullness to help offset the length of the face, we don't want to add that much fullness. Now again, bangs would go a long way here to actually helping a bit with both adding a bit of fullness to the face, but also adding a little bit of interest. Now, as you can see in these photos, the length is actually a little bit longer than the chin, and I want to show you these because I want to show you the options that you have so that we don't get super literal about all of this. But as you can see though, there's still a lot of layering going on the sides here, which is taking out the bulk so it doesn't do this, okay? And that is really helping to add a little bit more width in this area, which is helping to broaden the face a bit. So the length isn't super long, it's just a bit longer than the chin, still close enough to give us the overall feel that we're trying to achieve. Now in here, we basically have a very similar thing where we've got a lot of fullness on the sides, even though that length is a little bit longer than the chin. If this gets too full, it's still gonna start doing this. And that is still going to end up bringing the eye down the shape. So even though we want a little bit of extra fullness in here, we're still gonna need to layer it a bit with thick hair to do that or achieve that. So the main goal is that we're taking the length closer to the chin to help offset the length of the face, but layering it enough to make sure that we don't add too much width. The layering can be through heavy texturizing or just lots of layering, or in some cases both. Either way, we just want to ensure that the amount of hair doesn't make the shape lay flat on top and create way too much fullness on the sides that actually works against everything that we're trying to achieve. Okay, thick, curly hair. You've got a full, round face. In this scenario, we definitely want to keep the length an inch or two at least longer than the chin. Very aggressive layering on the sides and top, as well as in the nape, is gonna help offset that fullness. Bangs are still an option, but definitely not straight across. Something more along the lines of curtain bang or a swept off bang would be way more appropriate here. So you can see here, that length is quite a bit longer than the chin down here, and that's really helping to add some more length to the face. But there is a substantial amount of layering in here that is helping to take that bulk out. Otherwise, this would be very much like this. Terrible drawing. But it would look much more like that than like it does. I apologize for this horrible drawing here, you guys. This is disgusting. You can also see that there are bangs here, but these bangs are kind of more, I don't want to say a curtain bang, but more similar to a curtain bang, and that they're being swept off the face here. So it still leaves this part opened up, so you still see the length, so it doesn't actually make this look too full. The main goal is to use the extra length to add more length to the face while making sure that we're layering it aggressively enough to pull out the bulk from the side so it doesn't end up looking too full and help give shape and movement to the overall texture. Now, if you were to go shorter with the shape, you would just want to be even more aggressive with the amount of layering that you do on the sides to really make sure that doesn't get too full. And what if you have a long face? Well, in this case, I would leave the length closer to the chin again. Now, curly hair is already gonna add fullness. There's gonna be, for most people, too much fullness. So leaving the length a little bit longer will help to ensure it doesn't make your face look too wide. Now, still keep layering on the sides and in the nape and on top, as they're going to definitely help. And if you decide to go with bangs, they can be a little bit stronger and fuller here, but the length range closer to the eyebrows is still gonna be beneficial. And they could even be a little bit more full than you're seeing here. Really, we wanna keep them closer to this length. Now, I will say that if you're gonna have your bangs, we wanna keep them longer, especially if they're gonna be fuller. But then in that scenario, I would actually leave this length a little bit longer, probably down in here, just to make sure that we don't actually add too much width to the face, because this length being at the chin or close to the chin, that's adding width. And then when we add bangs in, that's also adding width. And then if we have more fullness on the sides because the hair is curly, also adding width, and it can be too much. So we want to kind of dial one of those things back. The main goal is to ensure that we get the length close enough to the chin to help add fullness to the face, but utilize a lot of layering and texturizing to take that necessary bulk out of the sides so that it doesn't look like a triangle. Okay, so how are you gonna apply this info? Because I know I just gave you a lot. Well, let's make it simple. One, figure out what bob style you're actually interested in. So find some photos and figure out which one do you like. Step two, what do you want to do with your face? Are you trying to add a little bit more length to it, or are you trying to add a little bit more width to it? And step three, you're gonna take what you learned today and you're gonna apply it to make the style that bob that you want function better for your face shape. Hey, side note, if you're actually finding value in this video, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button. Totally free. You can unsubscribe at any time, but it really helps the channel. But more importantly, if you actually are finding value in this, share the video with someone else that you know that it could also help. It makes you look amazing. Okay, so now that you have an idea of what bob to get, let's learn what to do after you get home and shampoo your hair. See, here's the process that I used behind the chair on clients to get the just stepped out of a salon look. And side note, there are some tricks in here that I promise you no one else ever talks about. If you don't know these 5 styling hacks, you're probably styling your bob totally wrong. If your bob has too much volume on the sides, it can make your face look full and droopy and kind of make the top feel like it's flat to your head. Or if there's too much volume in the nape, it can bring your eye down and make your profile feel frumpy as well. Now, if the line is too parallel to the floor, it can make it seem like the back is too long and it'll bring your eye down also. Now I'm gonna show you 5 styling techniques that will fix all of these problems, no worries, and make any bob look 10 times more flattering on you. Oh, and by the way, this works on everyone. Now, before we start, I want to show you these photos. This is kind of a before and an after, if you will. Now, here's the craziest part. I didn't change Deanna's haircut in these at all. All I did was just manipulate the style to show you what happens if you don't implement the techniques that I'm about to show you. Now we're gonna first start by spraying in a leave-in conditioner. This isn't really a heat protectant, but it does have a little bit of heat protecting qualities, but really it's just to add some of the nutrients. You will wanna add a heat protectant to this as well. But I'll start by just spraying this in. And I really am not worried about where I apply this. I can apply this to the entire head. In fact, it kind of needs to be on all the hair. I find this one doesn't really weigh hair down. Once I spray that in, I'm gonna comb it through just to make sure that we get good distribution on it and get any of the tangles out that might be coming in. Then you're gonna spray in the heat protectant. So this is just gonna help kind of control any of the heat that we do use because we will be using some. And finally, I'm gonna work in a little bit of mousse. Diana, I'm gonna actually have you put this in because I wanna see how you do it specifically. She should probably do it pretty well because I've shown you like 12 times.
No pressure.
No pressure.
But the key is, was I listening?
Likely not. So hold your hands out. We're gonna start just by adding that much in. That is a pretty fair amount, but that's not a ridiculous amount. Okay, now work this in like you normally would work it in. Now I'm gonna stop you there before you start working anywhere else because you're doing good right now. Usually what happens is people will start in the front of their hair. She knows to start in the back of her hair now. But specific to these techniques today, you're gonna concentrate it up here and in the back. We have these recession lines in our head, okay? Mine you can see a little bit easier. So it's from here to that little bone in the back of your head. Everything below that in front of the ears. So this section right here, I actually don't want a lot of product in there for this, and you'll understand why pretty soon. So work that through and then kind of just barely put it through there. And we want to keep it out of the nape down here too. So that nape is this area right back here. Now that we have product in our hair, we're gonna start drying our hair. So I'm gonna give you this. This is the Life in Swift. If you're new to the channel, I've been using this for how long? A couple of years at least, by a few years. I am a huge fan of the dryer. That's why I talk about it so much. To begin with, I'm just gonna hand you this. We're gonna have you turn it on. So there's different settings, obviously. I'm just gonna have you turn it all the way to number 2 right there. That's full setting, okay? Now, one of the things I like about this is it's quiet. We can still talk while that's on. That's nice. Okay, so go ahead and start to dry your hair naturally how you would. Okay, stop already. This is perfect. I'm gonna have you tilt your head forward because we wanna get some of that lift in the roots, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of immediately doing this and starting to dry it back, which is laying those roots down, I want you to start rough drying it by going the opposite way. Like that, correct. Now, one of the things that you can do right here as well, let me show you this, Diana. You can hold this button right here for 2 seconds, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. See how that started to turn purple? That's going from hot to cold. So it's a hot-cold function that will help to minimize the damage and frizz on your hair. Perfect. This leads us into step number 1, which is control your part. One of the biggest things is understanding where you're gonna part your hair and why that's actually really important for where you're creating volume and what's really setting these bobs apart. Yeah, this is the famous volumizer brush. You've been around, you know I love these. And I want you to just start to brush your hair from side and come forward and then go to the other side, okay? We're gonna do the same thing, but now all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you this dryer and we're gonna add this to the mix, okay? Perfect. And you see how she's pointing the air down the hair shaft, right? Now, if you don't want to use a brush, you don't absolutely have to. It does make it a little bit easier to get the tangles out, but for some people it's just a lot more awkward. So you can do it like this as well. In which case, you use your fingers kind of as a brush to kind of get those tangles out. But by not drawing that in one specific direction, it means that you can be able to part it kind of wherever you want. But also, maybe you're parting it down the middle. Well, the concern with the middle part, they have a tendency to lay flat in the center and it makes the sides look very full. Allowing us to go back and forth means that we're gonna get those roots kind of going every which way. And that means that it's gonna have a little bit more root lift, even if you do part it down the center, which is gonna help the illusion of that volume. But also it means that if you wanna part it to one way or the other way, it's gonna have an easier time controlling it to get it to go that direction. Now, step number 2 is to keep the nape tight. This is huge. I never hear anybody talk about this, but it is such a massive hack. All of this hair, this section down here, that's basically the nape area. So what I want you to do in the back is I want you to actually dry the nape and I want you to make sure that you lay it really flat to your head. We'll round brush this up here, give this more volume, and that's gonna give us the illusion of lifting the eye. So it's gonna keep the eye from coming down because it's gonna keep this from looking so full. This is also the reason that I didn't wanna put a lot of product down here because there's no reason to have a bunch of product down there for volume if we don't want a lot of volume. I'm gonna trim circles, but I'm literally just doing this. Now, the reason I'm actually having her turn those little circles is because many times people have a hair texture that want to flip out. This will actually help it to lay under and not flip out quite as much. Now, there is one little caveat to this, which is step number 3, and that is that if you look at Deanna's hair, it's pretty close to her neckline. And so if yours was a little bit longer back there, you'd be able to get a small round brush or something in there as well. And what you could do is actually the opposite of this. You actually give that a little bit of bend and it'll make that bottom part come up a little bit. It'll stop it from resting on your traps here or your shoulders. And instead of it kind of bowing out, that little bit of bend will actually make the side angle look more dramatic. It'll make the front look like it's longer in comparison. More often than not, when bobs grow out, part of the reason they feel like they're losing their shape is because the back starts to break right here. It starts to kind of flip out. It starts to get a little bit bulky and it starts to feel like it's dragging down and you're not getting the volume where you want the volume. That can almost get you 2, 3, maybe even a month worth of grow out in between. I'm saving you money right now, I feel like, right?
So great. You're so great.
There you go. Now, this leads us to step number 4, which is to create strength in the baseline. I really love to use flat irons for this, but I also want to show you how to use a round brush too, because that can definitely be done. And if you don't like using irons in your hair, I want you to kind of see both ways. So you're going to add this modifier. This is just going to be able to give us more control over where we direct this airflow. We're going to take all of this hair up here and we're gonna comb this out of the way. So all we're dealing with is the hair on the sides. Remember, this is the hair that I said, don't put a lot of product in that right now because we don't want a lot of volume. I'm gonna have you just take this one section. This is just the stuff from the ear forward. And I'm just gonna raise this up just a little bit more. There we go. Now go down. Perfect. Down. Perfect. Down. Okay, and then let it go out of this one, go all the way through it. All the way, keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. Perfect. Okay. Now, do you see how strong that line looks? Mm-hmm. And you see how there's very little bend that's coming in here. Okay, that means you're still getting more than enough bend to this, but if we do this all the way around, we're not gonna get too much volume out of it. This side is still a little bit damp, so I'm gonna just dry this real quick. Done. This thing is so quick. So now on this side, I'm gonna use a flat iron, and I'm just gonna do this. And I'm just gonna do it very slight. That's it, okay? Now you can see how that has also made that a very strong line. If you're really concerned, round brushes work really well. And if you can use a flat iron, that's the way you approach it. So now we're moving into step number 5, okay? And step number 5 is lift the temples. We need to make sure that we get some lift specifically in this area right here. We'll take the round brush, I'm gonna take a section, and what I'm gonna do on this is, before I took this straight down from the head. I didn't lift them out, and I didn't lift it up. Here, because we wanna encourage this root lift we just created, I'm gonna lift it up. Then I'm gonna hit this button right here, and it's gonna turn blue. It's the cold shot, and I'm gonna cool it down while it's still in the round brush like this, okay? This is gonna help lock in some of that bend. So now when I take it out, there's a little bit more bend than down here. Mm-hmm. Now you can see the difference between before and now. I know one of the comments that I'm gonna get from somebody is show me on somebody with thin fine hair or show me on somebody with thick hair. So I said at the beginning, this will work on anybody. It doesn't matter what texture, how much hair you have. The last thing was, well, what happens if you have wavy hair? In those cases, all you would do is at the very bottom, when you get to step number 4, where you're trying to create less bend on the sides, you just do the exact same thing. You create less bend or less wave with your flat iron or whatever tool you're using. Then in the top, step number 5, we want to create a little bit more volume. You do a little bit more wave, and there you go. Okay, that's great, but what about the next day? See, in this next video, you're gonna discover multiple different ways to style your bob to get different looks for the next day hair, and then next day after that, and the next day after that. Some good stuff, just, you'll see. And it looks like this, or worse yet, this. You wanna make sure that it looks good, so what do? Well, I've been a stylist for 30 years, learned a few different things, and I think I have the perfect way of sharing the tips that I've learned to help you get second, third, and fourth day hair. How about this? Ben, yeah. You know all those tips that I've shared with you about how to style your hair?
You mean the ones I actually listen to?
Okay, well that's none of them, probably. Why don't you, over the next 3 days, style your hair? You're not allowed to shampoo it. You're just allowed to next day hair, day 2, day 3, and day 4. And you're gonna share the tricks and tips that you use. Then I'm gonna watch the video and I'm gonna share with you whether or not I think you did a good job or not.
And you better agree.
Absolutely. But let's see how she does. Yeah, we know. Okay, before we dive into the video, if you want to see the video on how we actually style Deanna's bob in the first place, where I share a lot of tricks and tips to getting a bob to look good on basically anybody, any bob, it works on everyone. I'll link that video actually in the description as well as the pinned comment. So that's our starting point. And now we're gonna move on to
my second day hair is pretty easy, but inevitably whenever I take a shower, I always get my hair a little bit wet. So I quickly blow dry, usually the underneath, and just straight hair real quick.
Okay, right off the bat, I think there is one thing that we want to chat about. There's kind of 2 schools of thought, right? So there's the school of thought that says that you should never blow dry your hair or use heat on your hair more than like a few times a week or every at least 3 or 4 days. And you know, there's stylists that believe that. And I think in a perfect world, yes, ideally, if you can get your hair to be cold style and get the look that you want the next day, for sure do that. But I think for many of us, you're likely gonna need some sort of heat to manipulate it. And you just have to balance out, is it worth that little tiny bit of potential extra damage to get a look and always feel good about the way you look?
This is really great, especially for those touch-up days when you're not wanting to fully blow dry your hair, you're not wanting to put a ton of heat on it. This works really well.
She is right. We've been using the Lifen for a long time. So if you are somebody that is really concerned about using heat, that might be a good option for you.
Next, I just brush it out.
Oh, okay. You don't do what she just did. Babe, seriously? Oh, wow. Okay, when you're combing out tangles, start from the bottom and work up. Don't start at the scalp and barrel your hand down. That's the fastest way to just tear your hair out. And if it's a really, really, really bad tangle, using a tiny bit of oil just on your fingertips and kind of working through it with your hands before you take a brush would be a good option.
So that's when I pull out my flat iron / curling iron that I use no matter how I'm styling my hair. And we'll just go over the pieces needed really quickly to kind of straighten them out.
Now I'm curious to see if she uses this right. Come on, babe. Let's see. Oh. Okay, she did okay. I do want you to notice one thing though. When she's going through it, she's keeping her wrist locked and pretty straight, but there's a little bit of bend. You can see right here, she moves it a little bit, and that's why she's getting that much bend at the very, very ends. Otherwise, you would just really lock your wrist and almost push out from your head versus down, even in a C shape. And realistically, just because of the way bobs especially hang, you're still gonna have it lay under a little bit.
If my hair's feeling a little bit flat on the top, take my favorite thickening volumizer.
This stuff is great, by the way. This stuff is fantastic.
Spray the roots.
Yeah. She does a great job of flipping her hair over, and this is exactly what I tell you to do.
Then if you have any unruly hairs or those little flyaways, for me it's breakage, I actually have a spray wax that I just spray a little bit on the top, and then I just smooth it. If I'm having a huge hair problem, then I bring in the big guns. Hairspray. But I save that if my hair's being all sorts of crazy.
I almost stopped that there to say wax can work well, but a hairspray will actually work better to be more controlling. So, well done, babe. Good job.
Also, if you're wanting a little bit more height, instead of spraying your hair and turning it into a helmet, instead lift your hair, spray. Lift your hair, spray. And it kind of helps keep the volume up.
I didn't teach her that. Well played. And that's a spot on routine for drying your hair or restyling your hair the second day. Now you can see what it looked like after day 2. So what happens the next day? Or what if your hair looks a little bit crazier? Well, let's see what Deanna does now.
So again, first thing that I do after I get out of the shower, inevitably a little bit of my hair is wet, usually underneath, usually around the hairline. So I'll blow dry.
Can we first just stop and just be like, if anybody ever thinks that my wife is fake in any way, shape, or form, or what she shares online is fake, are you moving along?
Okay, since I'm home and Justin might walk in as I'm brushing my hair, I need to make sure that I brush it correctly to prove that I do listen to him sometimes.
I love the fact that she's trying to do it correctly. However, she started with going up at the scalp right out of the gate and then worked from the bottom up.
On day 3, sometimes my hair can start feeling a little bit greasy, just kind of on the root. Dry shampoo is my friend. I love Batiste, and I concentrate this at the roots.
What you might not recognize here is it's more than just concentrating it at the roots. What she's actually doing is concentrating it in the areas that she typically feels the most oil and in the areas that she's trying to maximize volume. Wherever you're trying to get volume, that's where you use dry shampoo. So I did an entire video where I broke down 5 of the most popular dry shampoos, both shampoos that are actually meant to just make your hair feel clean, as well as the ones that are meant to make your hair actually get volume, and they're can be used kind of as a styling aid. So if you want to check that video out, I'm going to make sure I go ahead and link that in the description as well. But choosing the right dry shampoo is definitely key. This is an important part too, is actually working that dry shampoo in a little bit after you spray it or apply it.
If I'm wanting a really blunt bob, like sharp lines, then I'll pull out my flat iron and just run it through just the very ends to get that sharp line back. And I like to go over it slow, so I only go over it once. So I used to be the girl that would go and here and here and here, and I believe that's when the damage happens. So if I can go over a little bit slower and just do one pass, there's less damage, less time that your hair is under heat.
It's almost like she does listen. That is absolutely the truth. People go real slow over the mid shaft, and then when they get just right at the ends, they kind of go through it really fast. Doesn't quite look right. It doesn't look as smooth as you want it to look, and you don't know why. It's because those ends aren't polished. Once those ends get polished, now it feels good.
At least that's what Justin told me.
Told you.
But what I sometimes like to do on day 3 is kind of mix up my part a little bit. So this is typically where I part it. Day 3, if I'm losing a little bit of height, I'll part it over just a little bit more. And so you get that extra little bit of height in the front. If you can see that.
Great tip. That's exactly right. Sorry, I gotta stop this here because there's one other thing that I don't know if you're gonna notice here, but if I flip this back, right here is kind of a good view of it. Another thing she's doing here, she tucks one side behind her ear. Now that might seem small, but that's actually quite important. If you look right here, this whole area doesn't have a lot of volume. And that immediately, especially as being pinned in right here, makes this part right here actually look like there's a little bit more volume. So hair is an optical illusion. Anytime you can create less volume here, you're gonna look like you've got more volume up here. And that's what we're doing. We're comparing volume. Also actually accentuates more of your cheekbone structure as well as your jawbone structure because it's lifting the eye because of the volume is up here.
I do like to go in a little bit of oil, just like one little pump, and I actually rub it all in my hands. I don't just rub it right here. And then I kind of just concentrate on the ends.
One tip to this that she's kind of doing, but you could be even a little bit more thoughtful on this. If you're gonna add oil to your hair, that's great. When you work it through your hands like this, and so it's just basically on your palms, okay, because that's where your larger surface area of your hands is. What you don't do is put your hands flat and then work it through, because then you're getting all of that product that was on here up in your roots and on your like mid shaft more than you need to. Whereas if you just do this, and now you work that product in like this, because of the way your hand's shaped, your scalp is like this, it keeps your palm up off of your scalp, so it doesn't have the ability to get into your scalp. Now, once you work that through all your fingers and everything on the outsides and on the insides, you can't control as easily where that hair is going, especially if you're working your hands through your hair. So doing this and then working it through the ends was just gonna make sure that it applies the remainder of that product primarily to the mid shafts and not so much to the roots of your hair, which could cause more problems than solutions. But otherwise, you're doing great, babe, I promise. You're killing it. Okay, and now you can see the before, day 1, and now we're on day 3. And as you can see, there's not a huge difference here. She's still getting a very similar look, but maybe you're like Deanna and you just want to change things up a little bit.
Today I'm gonna mix things up, and I've decided to put some wave in my hair.
Okay, this is really smart to do, and let me explain why. The minute you add wave to it, 1, we're creating more volume in the hair again, simply because we're adding wave that compounds on itself, and that hair that's compounding on itself is creating inevitably more volume. But 2, because of wave is not bored straight, it has a tendency to look a little bit denser. But I want to know what she does. How does she create this?
I'm gonna take my flat iron / curling iron and create some bend in my hair. So what I typically do is I take from the temples, or as Justin calls the recession line, and I just draw a line across, and I will pin this part up.
She's doing a good job. She gets the other stuff out of the way so that she can manage to work on what she needs to work on.
Just flat iron the ends just a little bit to smooth them out.
The way she's doing this is great because then it's less time that you're actually dealing with trying to curl your hair. Like if your hair already looks good at the ends, then you don't need to do this part, right? You skip this step, and that means that this whole part is not even part of the process. Now you can just deal with the stuff that she's got on top of her head that she's got pinned up.
So normally I would just add some curl. I wouldn't add any product in it, but Justin told me to use this dry texture volumizing spray on each section I curl. So I'm gonna try it out and I'm gonna see what I think.
I gotta be honest, I kind of intervened on this one little aspect in this particular part of the video because I wanna see if she'll do it the way I would tell her to do it, and if she does do this, if it actually turns out in a way that she likes it.
A section about this big.
That's about the right size.
So kind of a generous section. So the curlier you want it, the smaller the section. The less curly you want it, the bigger the section.
Ah, she has listened to me.
We're gonna spray.
All right, just a couple sprays.
Brush it through.
Perfect, comb it through. This is exactly what I would tell you to do.
And then I just give it about a 360 turn and I pull it out.
There you go. Okay, so that's what I was talking about. And here's why I think this is important. We've been doing a lot of it, especially if you've been actually flat ironing your hair each day through this process. You've manipulated your hair a lot to go straight. Now, many times what can happen is once you've done that, it can be a little bit more resistant and harder to get it to hold the wave. So sometimes we need something to give your hair a little bit more grip. And so what I found in the salon is a lot of times I could use different hairsprays or different products, and I could actually spray each section down, then flat iron it, and actually is much better at holding curl, but also it gives it a little bit of bounce. This is obviously very dependent on what product you use. I still wanted to make sure that you're aware of this little trick that has saved my butt in the salon more than once.
With this front piece, I don't like a lot of curl in the front, so I actually bring it back a little bit and then I curl it back.
That's a good trick too. So what she's doing is she's over directing it. That's what we call in the salon. She's over directing it back. That means that it's pulling some of that back so that root isn't getting quite as much curl. It's starting the curl farther down that hair strand so that it's a little bit less overall curl, a little bit more wave.
Make sure to curl it backwards, and I don't spend a lot of time on the front piece. I just actually want a little bit of bend towards the end, so it'll kind of, you know that Farrah Fawcett where it's just whoosh, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Not a lot of curl in the front.
Something important to point out is that the reason that this curl in the front is actually important is when you don't curl the underneath, especially or in the nape, and you have a bunch of curl on top, having that front piece or those front pieces a little bit less curly actually makes it make more sense. It allows it to blend those side underneath parts that are a little bit straighter, and it brings it all together.
Okay, now here's what I do next. I let my hair sit so it can cool down, and so while it's cooling down, I actually do my makeup. The reason I let my hair cool is because I feel that it holds the curl much, much longer.
And that is a very, very important tip. Letting your hair set and not messing with it while it's actually kind of setting, if that makes sense, allows the product to really settle in, it allows the heat or the hair to cool down if you just ran it through an iron, right? All of those things allow that curl, the wave in her situation to really, really lock itself in as good as it can. Then when you go through and do what she's about to do, it's gonna last a lot longer than if you did that right after you got done with that last piece.
I like big hair, and I cannot lie. And I go in with the texturizing spray, the volumizing spray, and I'll just get up in the root area underneath. There we go.
That's not far from how she wears it.
Then you just play around with it. Just play around with my hair.
See how it just starts to fall into shape? It gets better as she plays with it more.
I usually like to tuck this side.
Yep.
And I'm good to go.
Yeah, it looks really solid. Okay, and now you can see the before day 1 style and this, day 4. And you can see that they are totally different styles, but they both look fantastic, and she didn't have to go through the whole shampoo, condition, blow dry process like you would if you completely redid your hair. So I hope that helped. I think Deanna did a really good job. Good job, babe, well done. All right, well, hey, if you made it this far, thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate you. But do me a huge favor, comment below and let me know if you actually like the format of this video, because honestly, I wanna make sure that I'm creating content that you love, and I appreciate the feedback. So do that, go down there, comment, you love it, hate it. Actually, just tell me if you love it. No, I'm just kidding. I need honest feedback, so do that. I appreciate you. And by the way, if you liked this video, you're probably gonna love this one, so check that out next. All right, we'll see you over there. Take care now.